may I say to you, there are some among us who are Republicans who believe that the Constitution is a living document. And we elect them every year right here in the state of Texas. But because the cameras are rolling, I will not say their names. Now, listen. We have been given a set of principles that have played a major role in the securing and the success that we have enjoyed here since the founding of this nation. What are those principles? I submit to you there's 10 principles. 1, liberty. 2, equality. 3, natural rights. 4, consent of the governed. 5, religious freedom. 6, right to private property. 7, the rule of law. 8, constitutionalism. 9, self-government. And 10, independence. The right to independence. These are concepts, men and women, that are sourced within the Bible. In the Bible. And can be proven. Listen, I've read somewhere, I think it was David Brodin, it says over 33 principles from the book of Leviticus are found in the Constitution. 33. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Matthew Spaulding goes on to say this in his book. Quote, our nation's founders knew that the perpetuation of liberty would always depend on spirited citizens and patriotic statesmen actively engaged in the democratic task of governing themselves, holding to the spirit of 1776. Spirited citizens. I'd like to believe I'm standing among them right now. Spirited citizens who are fighting through the spirit of 17. What is the spirit of 1776? It was the spirit to push back against tyranny. Yes. Tyranny from King George. Tyranny. What did our founding fathers do? These 13 colonies stood up and they said enough. And they laid down their lives, their fortune, and their sacred honor to produce what we have today. Men and women, I submit to you today that we can do no less. We can do no less, for we too are facing tyranny of the worst kind. Soft tyranny, Mark Levin says, always turns into hard tyranny. We're on our way to hard tyranny. We're one crisis away from this government turning on us. One crisis away. The spirit of 1776. Men and women, I know it's in this room. It needs to be focused and targeted. It needs like a laser beam, focused on what? Protecting those liberties guaranteed to us in the Declaration of Independence and framed up and articulated through limited government inside the Constitution. Listen to me. It will require of us to be engaged in nullifying all unconstitutional acts. If my premise is correct, and I believe it is, all 3 branches of our government are involved in unconstitutional acts. It is incumbent upon us to move, and to move now, to stop them. Through petition, a demand for redress. Now, when I say nullification, some of my Republican friends get nervous. Because they think I'm talking about nullifying and that the state will withdraw from the union. Although that is an option for us. Hello. It is indeed an option. But I think we need to do the constitutional thing first. Petition redress. But let me tell you what James or Thomas Wood Jr. said in his book, Nullification. He says this, quote, the central point behind nullification is that the federal government cannot be permitted to hold a monopoly on constitutional interpretation. That the federal government cannot have a monopoly on determining what is constitutional or not. Why did he say that? If the federal government has the exclusive right to judge the extent of its power, warned James Madison and Thomas Jefferson in 1798 in the Alien and Sedition Act. responding to that, said this: it will continue to grow regardless of election and separation of power and other much touted limits on government's power will mean nothing. Will mean nothing. And that's what we have been doing, engaged in for the last 40 years, men and women. We've been listening to our candidates come in here and talk about, I'm for limited government. I'm for limited government. And they are going to Washington and producing more big government. Big government. And we're just saying, wait a minute, I just heard him say he's for limited government. Why is he voting that way? How many of you know that many of our Tea Party freshmen voted for the NDAA, for the National Defense Authorization Act? What on earth happened? Yeah. Louis Gohmert, one of my favorites, voted for it. I pulled Louis over. I was in Tampa as a delegate for the Republican Party, and I pulled Louis over and said, Louis, why did you vote for that? He said, I was tricked. I said, what do you mean? He said, I came up with an amendment to remove indefinite detention. He says, I came up with an amendment to remove it, and Boehner said to me, we'll get that in later. Just vote for it now. Be a team player. There's no I in team. He said, I voted for it believing that he would help get it out of the way. And he never did. Men and women, there's something going on in Washington, D.C. There's something happening. And that fundamental change is not just being articulated by the Democrats. It's being articulated in action by some of the Republican leadership. And that's how Louis said it. He says it's a problem with leadership. It's a problem with leadership. He said it over and over again. Just here recently with the North Dallas Tea Party, I was up there with him about 2 weeks ago. And I heard him. He was very careful. He has to be diplomatic. I don't have to be diplomatic. He said, we need to somehow influence our leadership. But Thomas Wood goes on and he says this, and I'm almost finished. He says this: a condition a constitution is, after all, only a piece of paper. It cannot enforce itself. Checks and balances among the executive, legislative, and judiciary branch, a permanent feature of the Constitution, provides little guarantee of limited government, since these federal branches can simply unite against the independence of the states and the reserved rights of the people. And that's exactly what we saw happen, men and women, with Obamacare. All three branches affirmed it. Judge Roberts gave him an excuse. Sure, we got Romney saying that he's against it, but I just heard about 2-3 weeks ago, he says, there's some parts of it I like. I got real nervous. Real nervous. What do you like? I don't see anything in Obamacare that needs to be kept. We need to just terminate and get rid of it. Don't repeal and replace, just repeal it. And then open up the markets for portability, that insurance companies from all over the country can sell their wares anywhere. The prices will drop because of competition. Competition. That's what we saw, men and women. All three branches teamed up against us and shoved right down our throat Obamacare, when over 70% of Americans said, we don't want it. We don't want it. But we don't know what to do. Alexander Hamilton contended in Federal 78 that there is no position which depends on clearer principles than that every act of delegated authority, contrary to the tone and tenor of the commission under which it is exercised, is null and void. Now, what did he say? He simply said that any act that goes contrary to the tenor of the commission is the Constitution of the United States. That's what he's calling the commission. He says anything that is contrary to those principles and to what the Constitution speaks is null and void. Constitutional Defenders of Texas was started so that we might address the issue of unconstitutional acts